Okay, I think we're live.
Doing it
Excellent.
live.
It's been a little while since we've had a stream, actually, right,
It
guys?
has been a while since we've streamed.
Yeah.
Part of that was due, most of it was largely just due to the Mordheim 2019 event and us frantically getting ready for it. And then I guess the event itself, we were out of the country for a little over a week. So,
Yeah, no, so it's true. Yeah, so the very thing that prevented us from doing this, we're talking about tonight. So it's exciting. But
yeah.
yes, Adam said, yeah, we were out of the United States for about a week, and kind of just doing some sightseeing and stuff. But it ultimately culminated in the Mordheim 2019, like the event itself, which um, I imagine most of the people probably listening to this or familiar with our blog and stuff is are probably pretty familiar, or at least vaguely familiar with Mordheim 2019, which is sort of a collaborative event celebrating the basically the 20th anniversary of one of Games Workshop's older skirmish games called Mordheim, and it is, I guess, somewhat reminiscent of some of Games Workshop's other skirmish games, namely like Necromunda. Although this one was actually set in the old world before it was ended and turned into Age of Sigmar. But so it's kind of a skirmish game in the same vein of Necromunda. And being at the 20th anniversary, Alexander Winberg of the Echoes of Imperium blog, who's uh, pretty well known from holding a whole host of different sort of Inquisitor 28 narrative events, such as Tormagito. He decided that, he kind of wanted to celebrate this 20th anniversary and hold an event in Helsinki and essentially invite a whole bunch of people, um, his friends and whatnot, to kind of create war bands and go and celebrate and play the game.
I think one of the funny aspects about the whole event is I think the majority of the people who were actually at the event, this was really the first main time they actually played more time in general. So I think most of the people at
Yeah.
the event were very familiar with Mordheim and were probably playing and doing stuff in the hobby when it was released, but few actually played it. Um, there were a bunch of people in the event. There were a few that played pretty frequently.
Yeah,
But
namely Eric from like Nordic Miniatures and Jimmy from I guess what's his screen name, like the Phoenician, something to that
yeah,
effect, who had played the game quite a lot and were quite helpful and uh, sort of helping people with the rules and stuff while playing it. But yeah, as you said, Adam, a lot of us never really played it, and certainly the three of us had only played Mordheim like once or twice. But we were certainly in the hobby when the game was released, and I think it did kind of have a large effect on us and kind of sort of establishing the imagery and the grim, dark, I guess, nature of their settings. And I think Mordheim, maybe at least for me, was the first time that I really realized that the Warhammer had a lot of the same sort of darker undertones and aesthetics that Warhammer 40,000 had. Because I think coming into Warhammer for the first time, it's kind of easy to just look at it and sort of see Lord of the Rings because of, all of the fantasy races are sort of there. But Mordheim helped sort of maybe define and show people that a lot of these sort of darker, dirty, grimy elements that people associate with Warhammer 40,000 are also kind of present in the old world too.
I mean, I feel when we started in the hobby, maybe it was around the time when the second edition of Warhammer 40,000 was out, and I'm not exactly sure which edition of Warhammer was out. It was the box game that came with the Bretonians and the Lizardmen. And I remember, at
Yeah,
least in that edition, there were a lot of the imagery and stuff were these little like cartoony images, many of which were almost cute in nature. Like I remember there was one of a little Bretonian knight striking down a Zinch horror, and out of that horror more were popping out, but it wasn't wasn't
yeah,
illustrated in a way that looked terrifying, like say some of the horror models that Alex Headstrom had released years later. Um, but yeah, so Mordheim, in itself, I think was also very the artwork and the themes in it were very cohesive, and they kind of worked together to make a very desolate and grim setting. And I think the creator, um, the creator of like the rule set and everything, um, he certainly had a big role. Uh, Thomas, what's his last name?
I don't. Yeah, I'm terrible with pronouncing names. Pyrian, perhaps. I'm not very good with
Yeah, well,
British last
I
names.
think he had a big role in sort of curating essentially everything in the game and the different war bands that were present in the initial rule set. Like, I think there were a lot of races and stuff that he just didn't include in the game because it didn't really seem as if they'd actually be at that city at that time. So like the orcs and goblins and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's interesting that I think that theme that runs throughout the game is like really strong, just paging through the rule book and such, and playing the game or a bunch of the games this weekend for Mordheim 2019. That theme really sort of shone through. And when thinking back over some of Games Workshop's more recent skirmish games like Kill Team, it's very evident how different those games were and how like Mordheim is so focused on a theme and kind of telling a story, whereas like Kill Team, while you could try to tell a story, it's much more of just like a scaled down version of 40K in which like all the armies can be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, now so Mordheim 2019, it saw a whole bunch of different hobbyists from kind of all around the world sort of converge in on Helsinki to play a bunch of these games, and um, it's probably one of the largest, if not the largest, of these sort of collaborative Inquisitor 28, Age of Sigmar 28, like these sort of narrative, small scale games held to like to date, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I feel there were around, like, at least around 20 people there playing, give or take that. And then there were a lot of other people who sent miniatures and terrain and stuff to be used in the event as well. So it was a pretty big undertaking, and I think Alex did a great job of managing it and making it all possible. Like, the whole day of gaming ran really smoothly. I think most of the people there played between 2 to 3 games of Mordheim. Um,
Yeah, it was certainly an interesting thing. Like as opposed to a lot of other kind of collaborative events where it's like focuses on like maybe one large game or a couple larger games. This was a lot more focused on just playing Mordheim like it was initially intended, and people just um, playing a few games with just all the different people there. And I feel like more games ultimately probably could have been played, but it was so fun just talking with all the people there and like looking at their models and things like that, that I feel um, not quite as many games were played as perhaps could have been, but like it certainly didn't bother me a whole lot. Like, and I guess everyone was still kind of getting familiar with the rules. But I think the Mordheim rule set is a pretty good rule set, and it's very like easy to learn, particularly if you have some familiarity with Games Workshop's other systems. Even like the um, advancement tables and injury sort of stuff is pretty straightforward. And I think even though similar to Necromunda, I think it's perhaps a little bit more fluid than the like older Necromunda rules.
Yeah, despite it coming out like 20 years ago, it's surprisingly streamlined, and there are many, and I feel elements to the game that are that one might consider pretty modern.
Nah, yeah, I would say that too.
But so I guess, as you could sort of imagine, with so many players and people there were a whole host of different boards that different participants and stuff made for the event, and they ranged pretty heavily in like themes and topics, from like different boards based on like graveyards to ones of like the city walls of Mordheim.
Hmm.
And I feel, I think of all the games I played, I only really played on two of the boards, which like I sort of wish I had the opportunity to play on more of them,
Yeah, I mean there are
because
like maybe eight or so different kind of diverse boards, so it was a pretty just looking at all those and all the terrain and stuff was pretty impressive to begin with, like let alone all the models there.
yeah,
Like Alex had created a whole bunch of them. I don't know, three or four of them, but then other people participating actually brought some of the ones they made themselves also. Like one of which was created, it was kind of like a modular transportable board that was built inside of like a carry case that would sort of fold out
yeah.
and open up, which was created by Nicholas Grillet. Perhaps that's not how you pronounce his last name. Sorry, Nicholas. But and it was like fantastic. I mean, you can find pictures and stuff on his Instagram page, but like it was really, really neat. And since the carrying case that it was built inside, it was built to like stand the case vertically and open it up. So it's almost like a picturesque sort of encapsulation of Mordheim, in the sense that there are all these different tiers and little narrow walkways and bridges and ladders and that sort of thing. And like just really stunning looking. And I was fortunate enough to actually play a game on the board, and like it like works surprisingly well. Like I was able to get my entire warband on there and deployed, and could like move them around and play the game freely. And although because of all the little pathways, like they're always worried that like based on how the rule system works, like if you get knocked down when you're on like a ledge or something, you have a chance of falling off and whatnot. And at least once in the game that happened, and someone fell to their death.
Yeah, I feel like the board did a great job of kind of capitalizing on some of the like strengths of Mordheim and the notion that similar to Necromunda, you really are able to play with different elevations and heights and such like that. It's not just you having a massive army on a flat board hurtling towards one another.
Yeah, nah, it's true. But in kind of speaking to the diversity of some of the like the terrain and stuff there, so there's that sort of board which is almost like a sewer like sort of thing. But then Kare from Iron Slate, he created this like stunning board that is sort of like a decaying castle with a likewise sort of decaying forest out in front of it. That was, if you follow him on Instagram, kind of documented sort of the whole building process, but like it's like a fantastic looking board. That it's a section that's sort of just a little the ruined city itself, but then kind of the decaying forest also, which is really nice and like fun to play on as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can find a good image of.
Yeah, I took a whole lot of pictures from from all the games and events and all that sort of stuff. So it's kind of hard to go through everything. And or actually, like at the moment, I'm kind of in the process of looking through them and trying to pull out images in the hopes that I'll be able to write up a post, kind of talking about the games and such I played. And I think probably all of us will try to do that. But so quite when they'll show up, I'm not entirely sure. Hopefully in the coming weeks. But like, there's a lot to go through and think about because like so many things happened during the event.
One of the other things that I thought was really neat about the event, each of the different boards had like little game aids and other NPC characters that different people sent. And for each of the different boards, there was like a little description and potentially special rules and events that could happen on that board, which I thought did a good job of adding to the narrative and sort of the themes present in the event itself.
Nah, yeah, that's true.
Hey, Lifeboat.
It,
Nice to see you here.
though I guess one thing, kind of, it certainly held true for this, but I think most of these sort of collaborative events, at least for me, probably the most exciting aspect of it is just meeting and like meeting up with all the people involved in it. Like some of
Certainly.
which just sort of meeting up with old friends, but in this case, a bunch of the people from Iron Sleet were there, which it was great to see a bunch of them again. It's because I guess it's been what 3 years since the Pilgrim event that we were
Yeah, we took
involved
part
in.
in. Yeah.
It was great to see Miklu or Migs. He was there. Kari was there. Um, and sorry, it was great to kind of see them again. And
I guess we also met Miklu, which another member of Iron Sleet, which he was unfortunately wasn't able to come to the Pilgrim event, so we were able to meet him here too. Or
Miko, you
Miko.
mean?
Yeah, you
Miko,
mean
rather,
Miko.
Miko. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, so that was great. But then, in addition to them, like pretty much everyone else who was there were like people I feel we've been following on Instagram and through blogs for like years now. It was really nice to put faces to people and like get to know them better. And I think that was just really nice. Like Eric from Nordic Miniatures. We spent quite a bit of time with him talking about models and all sorts of stuff and different types of metal, music. It was great. Anna from Gardens of Hecate. She was there, and it was great talking with her. And Greg, you actually played the warband you played was one created by her, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I perhaps anyone who's been following our blog for a while know that I don't do too much hobbying myself, and Anna had offered to make a second warband and have me use one of them, and I happily obliged or let her do that, and she made a great witch hunter warband for me to use, and that is indeed what I did use. Um,
Yeah,
and in
awesome.
the next coming, hopefully fairly soon, I plan to write a blog post describing the two games that I played with them. The second of which was facing off against Anna's Chaos Possessed warband, so it was fitting that both of the warbands that she made saw one another in in battle.
How did the
Yeah,
witch hunters do?
Um, they did pretty well in the first game, but then when they fought against the possessed, they got rocked.
The possessed are pretty nasty.
Yeah, yeah, they certainly are. Um,
yeah, and I feel also with like the, I mean, we were using just the general Mordheim rules, but to kind of make it more like they were like you had been playing with the warband for a little bit. You're given an extra 100 gold to spend, as well as some like stat increases and skills and whatnot. So I feel that allowed you to kind of make a few of your models a little bit stronger. Like I did, made my vampire better and such. And I guess it probably allowed Anna to like um, maybe upgrade some of the possessed a little bit more, or at least have um, a little bit more gold to spend on mutations.
Yeah.
well, a preview of what happened in the second game against the possessed. Um, the leader to my witch hunter warband, which I spent or which I had done some stuff to make better, like did some stat increases and whatnot. He ended up getting killed, and then after the game, like officially died. So
So what you rolled
that was rough.
like an 11 or something?
Yeah, I rolled poorly.
Ugh, bad times, but
Yeah, it can be pretty brutal. I know the host of the event, Alex, he had a cool Sister of Sigmar warband, and I'm pretty sure after his first battle, his warband leader was also killed.
Also,
Um,
anyone who hasn't played Mordheim, like if some of your characters die in an actual game, they're not necessarily officially dead. At the end of the game, you then do some rolling and figure out what happens to them. And oftentimes it results maybe they have some sort of permanent wound or something. And if you roll poorly enough, they might just be like completely dead.
or captured by the enemy forces or some other bad things. There are a couple good things that can happen. They're pretty rare. Like you could get like horrible scars and stuff, which cause the model to cause fear and other things like that in the game. I feel I was pretty fortunate playing with the sisters. None of my models over the course of the day actually ended up permanently dying. A few of them got some like wounds, like broken legs and stuff like that, or old battle wounds, which could prevent them from participating in certain battles and stuff. But
it's not too bad.
yeah, so overall they fared pretty well.
I had like one of my ghouls and like direwolves and stuff. Some of them died, but like um, you gain enough wardstone at the end of the games usually that you can kind of hire more sort of normal henchmen. It's mainly just if your heroes get lost, that's like the big the big loss, particularly if you lose your leaders.
Because like all their equipment and stuff is lost with them as well. So
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate. But yeah, so I was able to play. I played 3 games. The first, I guess the first game I played was against Eric, Nordic Miniatures, against his Sisters of Sigmar. So 2 Sister of Sigmar warbands battling one another. We sort of liken that to sort of like a religious quarrel.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, like, it was interesting. Not all of the some of the boards were a little larger than others, and on some of those we like more than 2 people played. So I know in a lot of the games, like 3 to 4 people were playing and battling on the same board, which led to some pretty neat and interesting interactions. And I know John Blanche, he had like a force of like ghosts
A cavalcade of not.
and such, and they were sort of just randomly appearing on different boards as people were playing, and sort of flying by the different war bands and horrifying and killing the various members. Like I think Greg, in your first game,
Yeah, John's spectral apparition showed up in my first game, and what he did, he'd just put them on the table, and then he'd roll a scatter die and some d6 to see which direction and how far they would travel, and if they passed through any of your models, they would get, I think it was a strength 4 hit on them that didn't allow armor saves. So they were pretty dangerous. But yeah, in the first game, I was playing against Johan or Jeff Vader, and Blanche's Spectral Ghost showed up and managed to wreak some havoc. Ended up taking out of action my Warrior Priest, which I think that was the only one that of my warband that was taken out of action from them. But in the same game, Tammy Nichols, I believe that's her last name.
Mm-hmm. Tears of Envy.
She's her blog's Tears of Envy. She had a warband of like time traveling warriors, and they teleported into the game that we were playing, and basically then just got rocked and messed up by Blanche's spectral apparition.
my
So
God.
they didn't get what they were expecting once they teleported onto the battlefield.
Hey Eli, nice to see you here.
Yeah, my first game was kind of played in sort of like the sewers and sort of like a modular kind of Zone Mortalis like board, and I was playing against one of the other Alexes that was there, Alexander Lunde, as well as Nicholas Grillet, who had created that sort of case board, but he was using a Sisters of Sigmar warband that was like really cool, kind of mimicked some of the illustrations he had been doing, which you can easily find on his Instagram site. And so we were all kind of just wandering through some of these tunnels and stuff, trying to find one another, and resulted in a lot of killing one another. And I guess the game works is if you ever lose 25% of your warband at the start of your turn, you have to take a single leadership test based on your leader's leadership, and if you fail it, you're out and you just lose the game. And Nicholas, he was the first person that had to take a route test because he was kind of pincered between my undead Alex's witch hunters, and so he was the first person to have to take a route test, but he had this like holy relic that allowed him to automatically pass the first test, so he didn't have to take it. And then Alex had to take a route test immediately after, of which he promptly failed it and fled. And then I had to take a route test, and I also failed it. So yeah, so Nicholas won, even though like all of our war bands are pretty badly mangled.
Yeah, it can be pretty brutal. Like, I feel most games only last like 3 to 4 turns because it doesn't, most of the time, it doesn't take too long for you to lose that like 25% of your force for them to be taken out of action. And then I feel most war bands, the leadership value of their leaders isn't astronomically high. It's like
Yeah.
7 or 8, so it's pretty easy to fail
I
that.
feel when I thought doing the route tests like with only 25% and just taking one test to determine if you win or lose the game seemed like, oh wow, that's like pretty early, makes the games kind of short. But ultimately, playing it a little bit more, I think it makes sense why they do that, because like you kind of don't want to stick around in a game where like all your models die, because then you have to roll on all these injury stuff, and like there's a good chance, particularly for the henchmen, that they'll just die and
Yeah,
then replace them. So it's probably better to like get out of there if you're starting to take losses, because even if you do, or even if you lose the game, like you still generally you gain experience for surviving, and you're able to like search for wardstone with like the heroes that you had left alive. So like there's a lot of post game stuff that you can do kind of regardless of whether you ultimately won or not. So
yeah.
it doesn't matter that much, and I think it kind of emphasizes this sort of hit and run, frantic nature of Mordheim. So I think it was very intentional, and ultimately it works pretty well, and it sort of allows you to probably more easily play additional games and stuff, and
Yeah.
maybe be a little cautious about charging like one or two models like up the like through the board and have them get outnumbered.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, if you really spread out and isolate your spread out and like spread out your forces, and you can really get rocked by doing that because it
Hmm.
doesn't take most of the models in the game. They only have one attack. Like, they're not really super strong, and
And
so
armor is like easily negated if you have any. So,
yeah,
but in one thing that like is pretty interesting about the game, that all the war bands are pretty asymmetric, and
yeah,
like
they are.
they're like the undead ones, like all my ghosts, I was using them as dire wolves, and like they have like the movement value of 9, and therefore like they charge 18 inches, so like they can like pretty much go wherever they want to.
Yeah, whereas the standard like human models, they have the movement of only 4, and then
Yeah,
like I think dwarves it's only 3, so they can, when they charge, they'll only charge 8 inches. So depending on the warband, they're yeah they can be pretty different, and the more you really understand your warband and how others work, the better you'll do. Like the Skaven, they're pretty quick. I think each of them move like 6 inches, which I feel is kind of the standard movement in most of GW games now.
but
So
yeah, but then they can run, which they double that, and then charging doubles it too. So like they're very mobile.
yeah,
But also like um, a lot of things, like if you jump between places or like try to jump from a ledge to do a charge, a lot of those sort of dexterities requiring things make you take initiative tests in which you have to like roll equal to or lower than your initiative. And like the Skaven's initiative is pretty high, such that it's really easy to like jump between buildings or like fall off stuff and not get hurt, do diving charges and whatnot. Whereas like or like prevent yourself from like falling off a ledge after you getting knocked down. Whereas like the undead, since most of them are like mindless zombies or ghouls and stuff, their initiative's terrible, and they're like really susceptible to falling and such. So I think some of the stuff like that, again, getting back to this sort of asymmetry and how each sort of warband has different strengths and weaknesses, is pretty neat.
Yeah, and I think it sort of really does encourage people to like play the game with multiple different war bands and kind of just experiment and find which like you like playing the most.
Hmm. One thing that was also nice about this particular event, as opposed to maybe some of the other ones we had participated in, since we were there like earlier and such, like on Thursday evening, like a bunch of us like actually met at one of the Warhammer stores and played like a almost like a pickup game of Inc. 28, which was pretty fun. And then afterwards, kind of went out for drinks and just were able to talk with a lot of the people for a while. It was kind of a nice way to sort of preface the event, because then that Friday, we kind of in the afternoon, everyone sort of met and kind of got out all their models, and they could kind of share all the models and talk amongst themselves. And then again went out kind of for dinner and drinks and just continued to talk about about the game and models and stuff, but then just about anything and everything. And like that ability just to sort of socialize and get to know one another better was like really nice. And um, yeah, I think that was nice to be able to do that, and more than just like one day, such that when we actually did go to play like the Mordheim games themselves, like everyone was like pretty familiar with everyone, and I think that was really nice. I mean, admittedly, a bunch of the people like had potentially were already kind of friends. Like quite a few of them had participated in Alex's previous event, Tormagito. Um, but yeah, so that I think was a really nice aspect of it, that all these kind of social things were kind of built in beforehand and throughout the event, that um, made it like kind of better than the sum of its parts. It wasn't just like a couple games or something. It was like a big kind of social thing that like yeah was really fun. And I already kind of mentioned that it was so nice kind of putting faces to people that we've been following for years and such. And like yeah, it was great. It was great. Just kind of makes me more excited to try to do some more collaborations and um, just keep going with the hobby.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, before starting the blog, or even at the beginning of the blog, I certainly wouldn't have predicted that we would have been like traveling to Helsinki to play some games of Mordheim with a whole bunch of people, including John Blanche and like the creator of Mordheim of all things. So like
Yeah,
you
you
never
never
know
know.
where the hobby's gonna take you. You never know where the hobby's gonna take you.
So I guess I don't know. Maybe do you think we could probably soon end the stream? Like I think we're going to. Well, hopefully pretty soon on the blog we're going to be having posts and stuff talking about some of the individual games, maybe some short stories. And I think probably in upcoming episodes or streams and podcasts, I think we'll probably talk more about the event and hopefully talk with Alex, the Alex that like headed up the entire event, has sort of like a mock interview with him, talking about different aspects of everything.
Yeah, and yeah, so I hope you have a podcast with him, just like because we've had a few with him in the past about
Mm-hmm.
different things, Outguard, maybe Tor Megiddo. I don't quite recall, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's nice to kind of hear how he thinks it went. Like it was certainly a lot of planning on his part for quite a long time now, and just sort of hear what he thought about it, how it went, and such. Um, but yeah,
I
it was
almost can't even imagine like the day after, like the day that we left Helsinki in the morning. We at least helped briefly help start packing up everything, and like so he had so much work ahead of him even after the game ended to like
yeah.
pack up all the boards, and a huge undertaking, which I think he did a wonderful job of orchestrating and seeing through. So
Hats off to you, Alex.
yeah.
Yeah, now he made it easy to have just a really great time, and not really be worried about anything. And like, yeah, it was really nice.
Hmm.
It was really nice. Makes me feel like I wish I was playing Mordheim right now.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to. I think we'll have to continue trying to play some games amongst ourselves of like Mordheim. Maybe slowly start working on some other war bands and stuff. Like,
Yeah, I'd like to expand mine a little bit. Like I would like to have a few more anomalies to function as ghouls and such, because they're like the only henchman model in the undead warband that can actually gain experience. All the
yeah.
zombies and dire wolves and stuff cannot.
I feel also making a few of the hired sword models would be pretty good too, because after each of the games in like your like exploration phase, depending on how you roll, you can, I forget what it's called. You can essentially hire a hired sword for free in your next game, and then afterwards, if you continue to pay their upkeep costs, like they'll join your warband. So like you could, like, I know Eric from Nordic Miniatures, he brought his own hired sword ogre essentially just for the opportunity. If he rolled well enough, he could essentially get a free ogre to join his warband. So having some of those other little smaller aspects and stuff, like, I think could be helpful and
Hmm.
facilitate games and stuff in the future.
Yeah, and Greg, you have to build up a witch hunter warband.
Yeah, I feel like one
Yeah,
of the big things, like I had so much fun with the
here's
event.
Lana's little witch hunter captains. I don't know if you can see this here. Webcam's kind of terrible.
But yeah, I had such a good time. I inspired to actually try to maybe start building and painting models again. Eric, I think you need to talk if we're going to see the pictures of the
Yeah,
model.
I guess that makes sense. But yeah, here's one of the witch hunter captains Anna created. Just really great models.
That's the model that died.
Poor witch hunter captain.
Yeah, so I guess maybe we'll end the stream here. Certainly, actually, Eli, what are you saying? Is there a way to come?
I'm sure you probably could. Admittedly, I don't know. I've never actually had the opportunity to even look through one of the Realms of Chaos books, but I
Mm-hmm.
think they had a lot of sort of randomization stuff to create characters and things, and I'm sure you could. I'm sure you could do all that. Um, but yeah, like, and it would kind of be fun to look into that more. And I feel with the advent of Warcries coming out soon, I think it's going up for pre-order this uh,
Mm-hmm.
weekend. Um, I think that would be pretty neat. Like, and I honestly, I'm kind of excited for it, not for the Warcry aspect, but it has some nice looking terrain that I kind of feel like I would like to just get to supplement some of the terrain that I've been building just to try to keep playing Mordheim. So, because hell, we have some painted warbands now. Like, that's more than I feel we could say for like any previous Games Workshop game. So, um,
It's true.
we have to
We
try.
might even be able to play the new Warcry game with the Mordheim warbands.
That's true. That's true.
I mean, mind you, I guess we'll wait and see how the game is. Mordheim itself is pretty fun and interesting, so like I could see I might be more interested in just playing that, but who knows? I mean, Warcraft, it'll probably be fun too. Like
Mm.
some of the newer versions of like Kill Team and Necromunda and stuff. I think they've done a pretty good job of updating them and making them.
And I mean, at least in the case of Warcry, it is somewhat like Mordheim in the sense that it's relatively focused for its narrative angle, and that it's looking at all these different chaos tribes and such. So I feel, I mean, who knows? They'll probably down the line add rules for like all the Age of Sigmar armies. But the fact, at least, that it's starting
Yeah,
out at that very focused, I think, is neat, and it will allow it will make it easier for people to kind of get into the narrative theme of the game without like having to do like really extra work. And I think,
yeah,
that was kind of one of the strengths of Mordheim. It's primarily just humans or like zombie humans and such. And I think all that allows it, and how kind of the exploration stuff works. It easily allows you to kind of incorporate a narrative throughout the game without kind of going over the top to and going overboard to do it yourself. It just sort of falls into place.
yeah. Actually, Eli, I think you're right. I think they already did have a post on Warhammer Community saying that they're going to be adding lists and stuff for all the other armies. So like they didn't waste any
Waste any
time.
time, yeah. So I feel like I kind of wish they didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they have to do it eventually, but like give it a little bit of time to.
We don't even know what the game's like yet.
No, I think one of their recent posts today about like the Iron Golems or whatever the warband is, they have some pictures of some of their data cards and talk very briefly about
Hmm.
the game itself. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens with it. So maybe we'll get a copy of it to play Mordheim.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll
All
see.
right. Well, so yeah, actually, who knows? Eli says, "Who knows how the game works? But you can be a Stormcast or a Goblin." Yeah. So we'll wait and see, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about the game in the coming weeks to months here.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess yeah, we'll end the stream here, but certainly look to the blog and Instagram for more information pertaining to Mordheim. And I guess if you have any other questions and stuff about the event, certainly look. You can ask questions like that on some of our Instagram posts or the coming blog posts and stuff that'll
Or
be
just
on the
through
blog.
Instagram Messenger or any of that stuff. Send us an email, any of that.
Yeah.
Happy to answer questions.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for listening and joining us this evening, and we'll talk to everyone again soon.
Yep. See you, everybody.
See ya.
Over and out.